As much as we all love football, this is one of those weeks where you come away thinking, what did we really learn? And that thing my wife's been nagging me to do, this would have been a good Sunday to do it. Regardless, we're talking about some football games, and Brian Kelly is out at LSU. Let's jump right into it. What's up, everybody? I'm Tristan Bunn, and you are watching Sports Bluff. Thank you for being here. If it's your first time, please subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it. Honest football discussions and having fun while we do it. We've got a lot to get into. We're going to talk about Green Bay and Pittsburgh. We're going to touch on Chicago, what's going on with Caleb Williams, Denver and Dallas, a game that maybe we can pull some information out of, and Brian Kelly's out at LSU. We'll wrap the show up talking about that disaster. We start with the game of the week, at least in my opinion, the one I was the most interested in. Green Bay going to Pittsburgh, Jordan Love versus Aaron Rodgers, and the game he made very clear was not a revenge game. Maybe it ended a little bad in Green Bay, but you kind of understood both sides. It seems like they're okay. I think Aaron Rodgers is just happy to be away from the Jets. We knew going into tonight that the concern for Pittsburgh was going to be, one, the defense, two, Rodgers' mobility, and going up against that Green Bay defense, the pass rush, Micah Parsons, and those things did rear their head as the game progressed. Green Bay won it 35-25. Let's start with the Green Bay side because they are the winners, and let's start with Jordan Love, who was amazing. His best performance of the year, one of his best performances you will see. He was absolutely on fire. I've got a QB comparison between the two. Pull it up right here. As you can see, Love, 29 for 37, 360 yards, 3 touchdowns, no sack, a 134 rating. Aaron Rodgers on the other side, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 sacks, 100 rating. The 3 sacks, a big difference. Jordan Love was able to escape and make plays. The game really broke to me on the play Jordan Love made in the red zone, rolling to his right, escaping, and he threw a floater across the middle, I believe to Christian Watson, over a linebacker, ended up setting up a Josh Jacobs touchdown. From that moment on, Green Bay just never looked back. They felt like the better football team basically all night, but they were kind of stalling out after they moved to the opponent's side of the field. They'd move the ball, have a good drive going, and just kind of stall out once they got into the opposing territory, missed a couple field goals, so it was closer than it probably should have been. I made a video last week talking about the Packers and how I felt like maybe there were some offensive issues and didn't feel like it was cohesive and gelling like I expected it to. And I asked Packers fans to comment, and a few did, talking about almost unanimously, the Packers' reaction to my video was, oh, we're going to be fine. Not worried about it at all. We got some injured guys. We're playing good. The concern level for Packers fans, just from what I heard, was a 0. They were right, because this was an incredible performance. This is what I've been kind of waiting to see, though. Not that it couldn't happen. I just wanted to see Jordan Love just take a game over like this and play elite quarterback, and he did it for 60 minutes. He looked amazing. Tucker Kraft was unguardable. What a tight end. What a weapon. When you have that physical bruiser tight end, it is such a great weapon and such a escape valve for a quarterback. Jordan Love was making plays all night. Pittsburgh just really had no answer. I thought the Pittsburgh defense was holding up okay in the first half, and as the game progressed, they couldn't hold them, they couldn't stop them, and offensively, they couldn't really get anything going either. They were very limited. For Pittsburgh to win this game, kind of had to go a certain way, and it never did. Green Bay is in cruise control in the NFC. They're 5-1-1. I think the only thing that can hold Green Bay back is them. I've thought the offensive play calling was a bit limited at times. Not tonight. I'm just talking about in general over the course of the season. But you can see they're really experimenting, finding themselves, working around the injuries and the different receiving groups and people they have coming in. Christian Watson's back. He looked great coming off the knee injury. Collinsworth talked a lot about how much he was willing to block and what he did just blocking tonight. You hope he can stay healthy because he's had a lot of injury problems. He misses a lot of games. But when he's on the field, he does make a difference. Even when he's not catching the ball, just having him within the Packers makes the offense better. Jacobs never really got anything going, but they stayed committed enough to the run where it was a threat. They felt like they could pick up a first down with it. And Green Bay just pretty much controlled the game and controlled the Packers. Green Bay pretty much just controlled the game, controlled the Steelers, and they're a Super Bowl contender. For sure. I think they're one of the better teams in the NFC. You could see things not going great for them because they could have those performances that feel a little lackluster, but they are gelling and they're just starting to feel more cohesive and get to know each other, and they're playing on a team level. You expect them to just get better week by week. Before we continue with the video, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Subscribe so you feel better about your sports takes. Back to the video. On the flip side, regarding the Steelers, it's just kind of the same issue with the Steelers. It's kind of what you expect. The only difference is in years past, you always expect the Steelers to have a dominant defense and then just squeak by on offense. This year, they're just not dominant on either side of the ball. The defense has been downright bad most of the time. Mike Tomlin has acknowledged such. The secondary is a problem, and they got torched by a really good quarterback. I thought Rodgers was playing well most of the game. He made a couple just throws that make you throw your head back and throw your arms up because he's so talented, even still at his age. But the mobility does become a factor because anytime the pocket starts to collapse, it's kind of over. He can't make anything happen. And when his receivers aren't getting covered up most of the night, that doesn't help either. They mentioned on the broadcast, and it did seem he started to key in on Micah Parsons because anytime Parsons got close to him at all, Aaron Rodgers would start to step up. There was one time late in the game where he stepped up kind of into a sack when I thought he had a clean pocket. But when you're having to make so many plays, you know you're going to have to be Superman for your team to win with your limitations. It's almost impossible. I thought Rodgers was fine this game, but fine was not good enough. They needed more. And the Steelers are going to be one of the teams that they're going to win enough games to be in it, but I don't think anyone's going to be scared of them. It's kind of the same thing throughout the past few years, only this time you do have better quarterback play. They're just not elite at any area. There's nothing the Steelers do that really makes you worry or makes you game plan. It used to be that it was the defense as a whole. It was the pass rush. It was the secondary, or, oh, their run game's really good. It's all on offense, just average, defense below average. And 7-8 weeks into the season, I just think that's who they are. They'll probably squeak into a wild card slot and get beat in round one. That's usually what they do. That's their MO. And until they can find a franchise quarterback, and I'm talking about a future because Aaron Rodgers, this year, maybe next year it's over. The Steelers have to have a succession plan. They have to find someone that can come in and make plays and bail them out. Like when you don't have everything going right, you need a guy who can make plays off schedule. When things collapse, when everything's not going by the book, he can, pull us out of the fire, because the teams that really compete and the best teams in the league, they all have a guy that does that. The problem is Mike Tomlin is a good enough coach that they just never are bad enough to be picking in the range of a quarterback. So unless you hit on a guy later, and which is possible because you look at the draft last year, Jackson Dart went very late first round. Giants traded to the back end of the first round to get him. So he was on the board. There are players there. They just have to do a better job in the QB scouting department and see if they can find an answer, whether it's a guy that's bounced around the league. I mean, look at what Steichen's doing with Daniel Jones. So there are answers out there. They just have to address it and realize until they get superior quarterback play, they're going to just kind of hover in the same range from year to year. That's just what they do. Tomlin's good enough. You're never going to completely fall off a cliff. And if you did that, maybe the draft picks would lead to a better change. We'll see how they manage it. They're going to be relevant in the AFC, but they're not going to be a team anyone's really afraid of. Lamar Jackson didn't play today for the Ravens, but regardless, they beat the Bears 30-16 in a game Bears fans probably thought was a big opportunity to take that next step, continue the winning some games, become a real threat in the NFC, plant the flag, and they just did not do that. I have less to say about the game and more to say about the Bears as a whole, because it is pretty clear to me that two things about the Bears. One, I think Ben Johnson's a good football coach. I think he is going to be a good coach. Two, I don't think Caleb Williams is a good quarterback. I've never been that impressed with Caleb Williams because I thought in college all of his success came from off-schedule plays. Now, yes, he's got crazy arm talent. He's super athletic. He does make some plays that make you go, wow, only a few guys have that ability. But they're always off-schedule, play breaking down, running, and finding the open guy. He can't play from the pocket and play NFL quarterback. You might could overcome that given the athletic abilities. I tend to think you couldn't, but for the benefit of the doubt, say you could. Say there's someone out there that could do it. Ben Johnson's not really that guy. I mean, he comes from having Jared Goff. He wants you to stand in there, operate the system, get completions, move the ball downfield, and it's very clear that these two don't gel because Caleb Williams wants to play backyard football, run around and find a guy and use his ability, and it just really breaks down everything Ben Johnson's trying to do with the offense because if you don't play within structure, then his game plan and all these plays he's doing and everything he's trying to set up, it just doesn't work. And you can see it when you watch the games that Ben Johnson is visibly frustrated with Caleb Williams. That's going to be something Chicago is going to have to deal with at some point because unless you think Caleb Williams is going to develop and magically turn it around, I don't know why you would think that at this point, though, because we've kind of seen what he is. I know the coaching situations has been bad. I know it's the Chicago Bears, but Ben Johnson is solid. We know how good Ben Johnson was as an offensive play caller. And honestly, just from watching the Bears this year, it seems like he's a good coach. He's had 1-2 faux pas, but otherwise, he has been prepared. He has been a competent coach on the football field, ready to go and have a chess match. And he just has a very limited quarterback as far as running the offense. You can see that it aggravates him, that he wishes it wasn't so. He did not draft Caleb Williams. And I see so many people when this topic comes up, they're like, oh, yeah, but he chose the Bears job. Well, he chose the best head coaching job he thought of the ones available. Maybe he wishes he could go back in time and take the Washington job the year before. Although, Jaden Daniels, injuries and stuff, not saying he's a clear-cut franchise quarterback, just given the injuries. Obviously, Daniels plays well. If this doesn't turn around, Ben Johnson's probably not going anywhere, and they will probably try to move in a different direction at quarterback. I know anyone who has any stock in Caleb Williams is going to say I'm overreacting, I'm being too harsh. I'm not saying they're going to do that. I'm saying if things continue down this path, you are not seeing enough from Caleb Williams to believe that he's going to be your guy. You cannot be confident that him and Ben Johnson are just going to be paired at the hip because it just looks like they don't gel. It looks like Ben Johnson is constantly aggravated with him. And you get the feeling that Ben Johnson knows Caleb Williams is actively holding the offense back. And it's not like all of a sudden Ben Johnson can just change his entire philosophy and run a backyard football offense. And even if he did, it wouldn't be successful because he knows his offensive scheme works and he's got the players. Because I always get on to coaches when they try to force players into their scheme instead of adjusting. But this isn't one of those situations because this is just, hey man, I just need you to play quarterback. I need you to stand in there, go through your progressions, get the ball out, get completions, get things moving. And Caleb has a really tough time doing that. You can watch the tape, you can see it, and it's starting to get to Ben Johnson. We'll see how it plays out. But if you're a Bears fan, I don't know what you would have to see to start to feel better about this pairing because there's just something that's off and they're clearly not made for each other. Quick costume change because I'm recording the rest of this in a second part. That's the only reason. I'm in a different colored shirt and we jump in. Denver defeating Dallas 44-24 in a game maybe some of you expected. I kind of was leaning Dallas in this game, but I've been buying a little lower on stock of Denver compared to everybody else. So this is a good game to address because Denver looked dominant in it. The question I want to pose is, do we think that this Denver Broncos team is good enough to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC West? Do we think they could win the division? Are they legit? We can talk about the offense and Bo Nix, whatever, because I feel like that's more of a mirage. I don't give Denver a ton of credit for putting up a bunch of points on a Dallas Cowboys defense. We saw Russell Wilson hang 30 on them. Everyone is scoring points on Dallas. It's just, it doesn't matter what kind of football team you are, you can score points on Dallas. Let's just set that aside for a moment. The more impressive part of the game genuinely was Denver's defense. I've thought the defense was good, but I have been buying a little lower than everybody else and kind of been pumping the brakes. This was an impressive performance because Dak had looked like an MVP candidate most of the year, and Denver really kind of shut him down, made him struggle, and it felt like they had just a vice grip on the game basically from the jump. You pair that with the offense humming and being able to score points at will, and you get a dominant dominant showing from the Denver Broncos. I guess I just need to see them play Kansas City before I can firmly believe they're that team. Because, like, they've looked good, but they've been up and down as well. Like, they've won a couple games really close where they looked like the worst team and got bailed out. Bo Nix has had games and stretches where he's looked genuinely awful. I mean, the Giants game, he was terrible for 3 quarters, and then the Giants kind of gave it away. Bo Nix just isn't as consistent as I would like him to be. He overthrows a lot of deep balls. Yeah, he can kind of pepper you over the middle of the field, but even that, it just doesn't feel consistent enough. What Denver fans are going to say, what a lot of defenders of Denver will say is, that doesn't matter as long as the defense is playing lights out. And that much is true. If the defense can be dominant, then Bo Nix can just, try to be in cruise control and drive this thing. But if this is your first time listening to me, I'm of the opinion, if you want to be considered a real championship threat, I think at this day and age, you have to have a quarterback that can go out and make a big play in a big moment when things are going awry. Maybe Bo Nix can do that. I really want to see him use his legs more. That's something we are starting to see, whether it's a conscious decision by Sean Payton or whether it's just kind of happening naturally as the way these game scripts go. Bo Nix is using his legs more, and that was something that I always liked when he was at Oregon, is his mobility, him moving outside the pocket. He can run. He can find guys open. It feels like in Denver a lot of the time he stands in the pocket and is just kind of, not like he wants to prove that he can throw from the pocket, but whether that's just the way Sean Payton's doing it, because that is kind of Sean Payton's game. I mean, he had Drew Brees for all those years. And Bo Nix is a more mobile quarterback. He is not the guy that's going to stand in there and carve you up like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. That's just not really his game. That's why people kind of who have been more skeptical like me, not that they're not a good team, obviously, but talking about being like a championship caliber team, I've just wondered if the clash of styles between who Bo Nix is as a player and who Sean Payton is as a play caller and wants to be as an offensive team, if those don't collide sometimes. I was talking earlier in the episode about how you have that issue with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. Like, Ben Johnson wants to run a type of offense that Caleb Williams just is not going to excel in. I don't think that's the same thing here. I think Bo Nix is playing better from the pocket. I think he can do it. I just don't know if he can do it at the level Sean Payton maybe expects him to, or the level he's going to need to if they want to go on some sort of real title run. But with the way the AFC West is, and the way the Chiefs kind of struggled to start the season, Denver is in a really good position right now. We're going to learn a lot about that team after they play the Chiefs these couple times. Now, regardless of how Denver looked, people will say, well, Denver almost beat them last year. It's true. Divisional games are always strange. Any divisional opponent can beat a division rival on any given Sunday, Thursday, Monday, Christmas, whatever. It doesn't matter. The division games are always tough. It's more about the matchups, and I just want to see if Denver's defense can slow down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense. Because since getting Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and all of his weapons back, the Chiefs' offense is humming. We saw it on Monday night against the Commanders. Struggled in the first half, and in the second half, they just started to unleash it, and the Chiefs were able to put up points. The good thing about this, about asking, how good is Denver? Can they match up against the Kansas City Chiefs? We're going to find out. That's the best thing about this sport. We are going to get there. This week of games didn't give us a lot of answers, not a ton of storylines to pull from, but one of the ones that just piqued my interest was Denver, because I thought Dallas would win the game, honestly. Obviously, I have been too low on Denver. That's just no doubt about that. Anyone who's going to jump on this and be like, look, Bo Nix and the Denver offense is great. They scored 44. I don't even care about that, because as I said, the Dallas defense is so bad. Everyone scores on them. It's more the other side, how they were able to hold Dak in check and really just limit that Cowboys offense. Things just never got right for Dallas. And if we want to touch on Dallas for a second, this is kind of what I was talking about when I mentioned them last week. Like, their offense has been so good, but they're one of those teams, because of how bad the defense is, their only hope is to win a bunch of shootouts. And then you get in a game like this, where Denver, who is not an offense that's been ripping off 40, other than the last quarter of the Giants game, which I think is more on the Giants than it was on Denver. If you can't score points, you're done, because even the offenses you don't expect to be successful, even the offenses you don't think could normally put up 30 and 40, they do against Dallas. So if Dak has an off game, if you have a pick, if you just don't get in a rhythm early, like, it's going to go bad for you. Dallas's offense has to be essentially perfect for them to hope to make any kind of run towards the postseason, have any kind of hope that they could make the playoffs and be some sort of threat. It's more just going to end up as a wasted season, I think, especially with the way that division's starting to shake out. Eagles are just taking away, the other teams are faltering. We'll see if Dallas is able to course correct, but if anything goes wrong, if they're just... to feel comfortable as a Dallas fan, you want to be scoring on every single drive, and they came up against a really good defense that was able to stop their offensive momentum. I want to go back and just talk about the Minnesota Vikings for a second. They got embarrassed on Thursday night against the Chargers. I don't want to say as much about the game. I just want to talk about the organization and the situation they find themselves in regarding the quarterback specifically. At the end of last season, the Vikings had a decision to make. They had a wonderful season with Sam Darnold. They won a ton of games. They made the playoffs. They felt like one of the best teams in the NFC. And then the last 2 games of last year, the regular season game against Detroit for the 1 seed, they got destroyed at the line of scrimmage, and Sam Darnold looked like he did not know where he was. He was seeing ghosts again. Then they go to the playoffs against the Rams, and the same thing happens. That young Rams defensive line absolutely destroyed Minnesota. Sam Darnold's worst tendencies started to come back out, holding on to the football too long, not trusting himself, the pressure getting to him, and he was horrendous in that game. Those 2 games kind of altered the trajectory of the Minnesota Vikings franchise. And I don't necessarily blame them for the decision they make. I couldn't have made it because I didn't see what they had in J.J. McCarthy. I wasn't at the practices. I liked J.J. McCarthy during the draft, but once he suffered that injury, lost all that weight, I was like, man, we'll just have to wait and see. We just don't know what to expect from him. That coming back from that's one thing. When you haven't played before, coming back from that as a new player, that's going to be tough. And the Minnesota Vikings were not in a situation where they were a rebuilding team. They had a roster and a coaching staff ready to compete right now. So they had to decide, do they want to sign Sam Darnold, give him a big contract and bring him back, or do they want to go with J.J. McCarthy, the rookie that, well, when they invested in him, was a rookie, to be the quarterback, because they invested a lot of draft capital to go get J.J. McCarthy, to go get Dallas Turner. They drafted J.J. McCarthy thinking he would be their guy. And they were at a crossroads. Signed Sam Darnold, who had an incredible, at moments in talks for the MVP kind of season that went really bad in the last 2 games, or go with the unproven guy who we put a lot of capital in. I thought both decisions were logical. I thought you could make a case for both of them. I completely understood after watching those last 2 games if you wanted to move on from Sam Darnold. But I said, if you wanted to do that, you really got to be sure about J.J. McCarthy. You couldn't be because he had never played. But if you felt confident in what you had seen, then you keep J.J. McCarthy. The way the things played out, I don't think they were confident, though, because it seems like they were offering Sam Darnold and entertaining it. They just really weren't willing to put up. And when it came time for push to come to shove, they went with McCarthy. Darnold goes to Seattle. He's having a great season with them. And the Vikings are kind of floundering. McCarthy's injury situation has been weird. He had that great, 4th quarter against Caleb Williams. Then he was horrible, has the injury, gets benched because of the injury, they say, but maybe they kept him out a little longer, put Carson Wentz in, kind of forced Wentz to play through an injury. Now Wentz is on IR and out for the season, and J.J. McCarthy is going to return in Week 9. Kevin O'Connell has been one of those coaches that's kind of been viewed as a quarterback whisperer, because what he's done with quarterbacks has been impressive. He got incredible seasons out of Kirk Cousins. He got incredible seasons out of Sam Darnold, revitalizing his career after his brief stint with Shanahan. Even moments with Josh Dobbs and these backups that had come in, they would look good with Kevin O'Connell. J.J. McCarthy, from what we've seen so far, has not. And it might just be that J.J. McCarthy is a very limited player. Maybe he just has a very limited skill set. And it kind of puts the Vikings in a precarious situation because they have a roster ready to compete. They have guys who are not in it for a rebuild. They're not wanting to go along to get along for a couple years and bring the quarterback along. Justin Jefferson's in the prime of his career. So you got the McCarthy pick that might not pan out, the Dallas Turner pick that's probably not what you want. And I don't know where you go from here. If you're Minnesota, it seems like the best bet, and we've got the rest of the season because maybe J.J. McCarthy will come back, look impressive, delight us all, and be like, they got their guy. I'm skeptical, but that's on the table. Just let's say that doesn't happen. They're going to have to try to draft another quarterback or bring in a guy like they did with Sam Darnold and try to do that again. Because it does seem like Kevin O'Connell can do that. Maybe he can find these guys who have been talented, but were at a bad organization and kind of got pushed aside too soon. And he thinks, I can get something out of them. Let me find some guys with some real athletic gifts and put them into my offensive system. Next year will tell us a lot about the Vikings because this is kind of a lost year, obviously. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs or be a real threat. They're done in that division. They're a joke. And they're one of those franchises who, despite not having the championships, not having the jewelry, they're always well run. They always win a lot of games, have solid seasons, and then usually lose those games in very disappointing and often humiliating fashion. This is a year that's just got away from them, and that decision, McCarthy over Darnold, has come back to bite them. It's not too bad you can't course correct because I do think they can find a player out there. I think you could find a guy out on the market that could come in and play with Kevin O'Connell and look good in that system. Maybe because of the season you're having, you're able to get a higher draft pick and leverage that into moving up and getting a player. I might be wrong. I think they wanted Drake May. I think they offered a package to the Patriots and the Patriots said no. So that's really where they wanted to go. Good move by the Patriots saying no. But if they can find a guy in the draft that they really like, or they can bring in a veteran, they'll be okay. I would be surprised if J.J. McCarthy is the answer, just because the injuries, the weight loss, the way he came back and didn't look great, looked good for one quarter and that was it, and has looked not just disappointing, but bad other than that. Next year is a big year for Kevin O'Connell. I think you just kind of accept this one, try to make it through, and see if you can address that next year. It is fascinating to see how it all played out because this wasn't one of those moves where it was, and at least in my opinion, I didn't think there was a clear-cut right or wrong answer. But I wasn't at practice every day. I didn't see McCarthy. Obviously, O'Connell saw enough to believe he could get what he got out of Darnold out of him. Maybe he was wrong, and that's okay. But you'll have to address it and move on quickly because you've got a lot of players on the roster who don't want to wait around. The Houston Texans got a big win against the 49ers, 26-15. And CJ Stroud started to look like old CJ Stroud. I understand the 49ers have a lot of injuries. I understand they're not the team that we thought they would be. They struggled in that game. It's not like this is a crazy impressive win. I don't think Houston's going to come on and make noise in the AFC. I thought this game was worth talking about for one reason. When I went and was watching all of the offensive plays for Houston, Stroud looked good in this game. He looked like he used to. And I think a lot of it comes down to the protection. I did a film breakdown of CJ Stroud earlier in the year and how much he was under pressure. It was an all-out assault against Tampa Bay. They were in his face all day. You couldn't expect the guy to be good. Now, because of that, there were moments he had in that game that he made a bad read or let the ball go too soon or started to feel pressure when it wasn't there. That's what happens when you're a quarterback. We saw it with Patrick Mahomes the past couple years. When his offensive line was shaky, he started to not trust it. He would bail out when he maybe had a little bit. He would start to feel pressure a little early because you're getting hit so often, you just don't trust your guys. CJ Stroud clearly is one of those confidence player. He needs to get going, start feeling himself, kind of like Baker Mayfield. Not exactly the same, but once CJ starts feeling good, getting in the game, making a couple throws, then he gets rolling and it just gets better and better and better. And I thought he looked really good this game because he had time to throw the football. Did they magically fix the offensive line or did they just face a depleted San Francisco defense. I think they just faced a depleted San Francisco defense. But the point of me addressing this game and bringing it up is if you're Houston and if you're Nick Caserio, because their decisions this past year to basically ship out Tunsil and just reshape the offensive line because, hey, different equals better. Not necessarily. Your offensive line was terrible last year, but I don't think you really did anything to address it. That has to be priority number one next year. You have to protect CJ Stroud because it's getting time where you're going to have to make a decision on him contract-wise. And let's just be honest, the way he's played lately isn't worthy of a big franchise quarterback contract. I do not think CJ Stroud magically lost his talent. I don't think he forgot how to play football. I think he's been running for his life, been assaulted. He's had bad offensive play callers, and that has led to him starting to develop bad habits and put together a string of bad games. And you can look at tape where things are his fault, where things are there and he doesn't see it or he doesn't trust it. But it all just stems from that pressure and him not trusting his offensive line. It's also such a shame because they've got such a dominant defense. I mean, in that game against Seattle, Houston's defense was doing everything it could to win that game. Will Anderson was a wrecking ball. They were just begging their offense to do something. Just, please, can you guys do something and help us? And they couldn't. They did it against San Francisco because, again, it's essentially mostly backups at this point. If you're Houston, I think you have to, regardless of what you give up around the roster, you have to go in all in on the offensive line next year. Easier said than done, I know. I don't care if you have to overpay. I don't care if you have to draft, above where you should. You have to get the offensive line serviceable to good next year because you have to find out about CJ Stroud. And he's at the point where he's had enough of this up and down play and often bad play after his great rookie season and even a lot of his sophomore. It's just, do we want to give him a big contract? Because that time is coming. And I would not feel comfortable making that decision either way right now. I wouldn't feel comfortable paying him, and I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable letting him hit the market. I need to, if I'm running the Houston Texans, I need to know about CJ Stroud. I think, me personally, CJ Stroud's a good quarterback. I think we just have to get him protection, and I think we have to get him some better offensive play calling because his OCs have not been great. That's why they got rid of Slowick after last year. I like D'Amico Ryans. This is one of the problems, though, when you have a defensive head coach. A defensive head coach with a young, talented quarterback, when you're successful, your offensive coordinator is going to get poached, or you're going to not constantly rotate offensive coordinators trying to find that guy. So finding stability for your franchise quarterback can be hard when you're a defensive guy. That's not your side of the ball. You don't speak that language. You're not the one in the trenches with the quarterback. Like Bill Belichick had Josh McDaniels all those years. You really want that guy that can translate things and that can stay, the guy you can trust to be there for your quarterback. Those are the two things you got to look for next season. I know Houston's not necessarily out of it, but I just don't think the line or the roster is talented enough to be a real threat this year, especially considering how good the Colts look in that division. I mean, the Colts are just running away with it. I don't think the Texans are in that league. I mean, they beat the really beaten up 49ers 26-15. But if you're Houston, priority number one, get answers about the future. Is CJ Stroud our guy? We have to figure that out next year. It's crazy how much of a difference 2 or 3 weeks can make. There was a moment 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever, when the Giants beat the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday night. Like, beat them. And Jackson Dart looked incredible. And Cam Scatabo had his breakout party. It looked like for a moment, Brian Daboll might have saved his job in New York. He might have righted the ship. The guy he's been talking about all offseason, Jackson Dart. He believes in this guy. This guy's the dude. This might be it. And we thought maybe he's right. Maybe it's all true. And how quickly it can come crashing down. This is interesting. A Brian Daboll stat. He's lost 31 of the last 42 games he has coached. The Giants have lost 31 out of the last 42 games coached by Brian Daboll. If you're not aware, that's pretty bad. You look at their upcoming schedule. First off, let's do that. Let's put the schedule up. They play San Francisco, at Chicago, Green Bay, at Detroit, at New England, and then Washington. That is not an easy stretch of games for this Giants team, especially when Scatterbo just went down. Jackson Dart has kind of been brought back to earth, even though I do think Jackson Dart's talented. I'm not writing Jackson Dart off at all. I think he's got a lot of good traits, a lot of things you like. Is Brian Daboll's job safe? Do we think it's over? We know John Mara brought him and Joe Shane back, basically kind of admitting they were on a one-year leash, which really didn't make sense to me because, and John Mara, we hope he's better. Our prayers are with him for sure because he's going through a lot. And I like John Mara. He actually seems like a genuinely good guy. Brian Daboll drafted Jackson Dart. I think if I was running the show, the fact that I've kept Brian Daboll and let him draft the quarterback, I would probably give him a little bit more of a runway. Maybe I changed the GM because I don't think Joe Shane's a good GM at all, even though, this class has looked all right. They haven't had Malik Neighbors. They've been dealing with a lot of injuries, but the roster starting to get better, and maybe they have a quarterback. The problem that you're running into, and the one thing I can't quite wrap my head around, Brian Daboll was hired as a quarterback whisperer, okay? You brought him in because he was the guy who went to Buffalo and fixed Josh Allen. That was the narrative. Josh Allen was one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in the league. He had all this physical talent, all this athletic gift you can only imagine, but he was inaccurate. And quarterbacks usually don't get better with accuracy. It just is what it is. And it fixed. Brian Daboll and Josh Allen turned things around and it's like, wow, he turned Josh Allen into one of the best quarterbacks in the league. As time has progressed, maybe Josh Allen turned Josh Allen into one of the best quarterbacks in the league because I'm starting to doubt what Brian Daboll had to do with it. It also seems like he's a little unhinged, and I've actually kind of defended Daboll. I like him more than a lot of people do. Some people are harsher on him than I. But the way he handled Jackson Dart going down in that Eagles game and screaming at the medical tent and almost refusing to put Russell Wilson out there, sending Scatterbo to do recon, like, go tell me what it looks like. That was crazy. His outburst, obviously, you can't blame him because his job and career is kind of tied to how good that quarterback plays. But all of that you might be able to overlook. You might be able to ignore all that and say, yeah, well, he's finally got his guy. It just hasn't worked out. The thing that I think will ultimately be Brian Daboll's undoing is how good Daniel Jones looks in Indianapolis right now. Because that was the problem. Brian Daboll's first year, Daniel Jones looks good. And they go to the playoffs. And they win a playoff game. They beat Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings in a playoff game. And after that, Daniel Jones looked terrible. And there were a lot of guys who defended him and said, and I was not one of them, just on the record, I thought Daniel Jones just looked awful despite what was around him. I saw a lot of people defend Jones and say, hey, look what he has to work with. He's got one of the worst offensive lines in football. He's got no help. The defense isn't good, no weapons. That's what people said, and it turns out maybe they were right. Daniel Jones goes to Indianapolis with Shane Steichen, and they right now are the number 1 seed in the AFC. They have one loss, and they're, kind of crushing everyone they play. They have a great roster. They have a great run game, but that's kind of what you want to do. There are very few quarterbacks that can overcome that kind of thing. There's only 2 or 3 guys in the league that can do that. Hell, Joe Burrow really can't even do that. He tries his damnedest. He comes really close, but even he can only overcome so much. That's, I think, what might be what unravels the Brian Daboll situation in New York. If Daniel Jones hadn't gone to Shane Steichen, Daboll could probably talk his way into another year or two and be like, hey, I got my quarterback. Me and Jackson Dart are cool. He's my guy. I can unlock him. This is the future. We're starting to build a good roster. And that might have worked. They might have bought it. But when you look at what's going on in Indianapolis, if I'm maybe not a football guy, maybe I'm the owner and I'm just looking at this, and I look at Indianapolis, I say to myself, oh, that's what a quarterback whisperer looks like. And I think anyone who really has a knowledge of football has always thought that. I know you can go back and watch the videos in this channel. I have been a strong Shane Steichen supporter. I thought when he was with Philadelphia that year, I was like, this guy is brilliant. I would hire him immediately to be my coach. I've always believed in him in Indianapolis. I never faulted him for Anthony Richardson, whether it was his decision to draft him or not. Okay, that was a mistake, but clearly Shane Steichen gets the most out of Indianapolis, and you see what he's able to do when you just give him a solid quarterback, and he gets Daniel Jones playing at the best level of his career. Daboll, I think, is probably on the way out, and you don't know what that means for Jackson Dart. I think Joe Shane's going. Him and Daboll are tied at the hip for better or worse, and the roster has started to get better, but they just feel like organizationally, somehow they're still always a mess. And they had their opportunities after they beat Philadelphia, and then you go and really losing to Denver in that game, blowing it. Because Daboll blew it. Yes, Jackson Dart threw a pick, but you shouldn't be calling plays for your young quarterback to throw a pick. The only way you lose that game is a turnover. All you have to do is snap the ball inside of 5 seconds, run the ball every time and punt, and you cannot lose that football game. The fact that they found a way to lose that game, they let Denver score 33 in the fourth, even after being gifted that PI call to score again and go up, that's kind of unforgivable. You have that, and then you just have these losses start to stack. The Scatterbo injury, it feels like there was a brief bit of hope, and it's all unraveling fast. Jackson Dart, I think, is not going anywhere. Sucks because then you got to bring someone else in and to develop him. If I had to guess right now, I do not think Brian Daboll is coaching there next year. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think, as I said, 31. They've lost 31 of the last 42 games that Daboll has coached. The Denver loss, the way things are going, and you look at what Daboll said, Daniel Jones was so bad, we don't need him, cut him, let him go. He goes to Indianapolis, looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the AFC. I'm afraid that's probably your undoing. Let's wrap up the episode talking a little bit of college ball because the biggest domino has fallen. Brian Kelly has been fired as LSU's head coach. He's got like a $53 million buyout. Apparently that's still being negotiated. The loss to Texas A&M was the final straw. Kelly is out. This is just a great example of what happens when you walk into a situation with a ton of ego and arrogance. Brian Kelly thought he could walk into LSU and put the thing on cruise control. He thought he could do it his way, and it didn't matter about the tradition. It didn't matter about the staff or the people who had been there. It didn't matter about Louisiana and the culture and the way they did things. He would come down there. He'd do it his way with a fake Southern accent along the way, just to kind of ease people into the process here. And he would just cruise his way to 10, 11 wins. And every season I'm in the SEC, the recruits will come to me. I don't have to do too much work. What a wasted opportunity. An absolute wasted opportunity by, one of the great fail jobs in college football history. For the record, I've never had a lot of respect for Brian Kelly. I always thought him being referred to as one of the great college football coaches and him being put at the top of the list of jobs, I kind of always thought it was patently absurd. I never watched his Notre Dame teams and thought, wow, now that is a well-coached physical unit. First off, Notre Dame gets the out of not being in a conference, so a lot of times they do have an easy schedule. And anytime Brian Kelly went up against fierce competition, it seems like he got his bell rung. I know it was a different time, but I'll never unsee that national championship against Alabama. It was a bloodbath from the first whistle. So when he was hired as the LSU head football coach, I just knew it was destined to fail. I didn't think it would fail this spectacularly and this soon. I thought he would just kind of ride his way 9-ish wins until they got tired of him and saw he wouldn't win a title. But he was completely checked out. By all accounts and reports he was not even engaged in the program at a deep level. He was on vacation during recruiting time. He was just thought he could do whatever he wanted and that LSU would take care of itself, I guess. Or he didn't care because he got the bag and just, I don't know. It's hard to understand what his motivations might be. But when you looked at him in that Texas A&M game, screaming and badgering his staff, every single person he could find, anyone that would come within screaming distance, he was shouting at them, making sure the camera saw it. calling out, yelling about the play calls, like he doesn't hear them call the play in and can't say something. That was as embarrassing a moment as anything else that has happened in his tenure. And it stank of someone trying to save face, trying to act, maybe put some of the blame on everyone else, be like, everyone I work with is an idiot. It couldn't possibly be my fault. Just a terrible, terrible disaster. Someone who never understood LSU, never understood the program, probably took the job, certainly took the job for granted, took the opportunity for granted. LSU is a top 5 job in college football. It is the cream of the crop. It is as good as you can get in college football. He was handed it, came to the South, and really just embarrassed himself. He wasted his opportunity. I don't know if you'll see a Power 4 school hire him after this. I really think his reputation might be burned that bad, and he might not even care. He really might not, but good riddance. If you're an LSU fan, guys, the buyout, whatever, who cares? You could not keep going with that because that guy really put a stain on the university. And that seems like strong language, but go on the internet and look at how many former LSU players, both who played under him and who didn't, just former alum, trashed him and almost celebrated his being fired. He does not seem like a good dude. That's just me talking. I'm an idiot with a microphone, not saying I'm the best, but he just seems like someone that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, thinks he's better than everybody, and he learned the hard way that it doesn't work that way. And not in SEC, not at LSU. So Brian Kelly is out after a disastrous tenure at one of the best schools for football in the country, which means one of the best jobs just became available in college football, and it has completely shaken everything up. I know Florida was on everyone's radar, and Penn State. Now it's LSU. LSU is at the top, and you wonder who they are going to call. If I'm LSU, I'm forcing Lane Kiffin to turn me down. Lane Kiffin is the dude I would go for. I think he is one of, if not the best offensive play callers in the sport right now. I think he is maturing into the coach that could really lead you to titles. And I say maturing. Obviously, he does all the trolling and the Twitter talk and stuff, but that's all fun and games. And I like that. I like his personality. It never feels mean. He's having a good time. He's gotten his life together. We know that the guy's gone through struggles, but you can't overstate what he's done at Ole Miss and what a success it's been. I mean, Ole Miss is a lock for 10 wins every single year. Would he leave Ole Miss? I don't know. I think it comes down to resources. If he believes he has everything he needs at Ole Miss, then he won't. I don't think he would. I don't think you should leave. If he thinks Ole Miss has everything that LSU does, then you stay. To me, it would be hard to turn LSU down. I would have personally stayed at Ole Miss versus Florida because it just seems like maybe Florida's toxic. It seems like someone has to go in there with an Urban Meyer, Nick Saban iron fist to fix that place. LSU's not necessarily like that. Brian Kelly set it back, but look at the guys who have been successful there. I mean, Les Miles, Ed Ogeron, they both won titles. I think Lane Kiffin is a far way better coach than both of those guys. I assume the job would be his to turn down. I know a lot of people have thrown around the name Marcus Freeman. I actually love Marcus Freeman as opposed to Brian Kelly, who I never really respected or thought was very good at Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's different. I mean, you can see the difference in just the way they play and the way they respect him. They beat Georgia in a playoff game and kind of handled them, kind of dominated them in the trenches in that football game. Marcus Freeman's a very good coach. I might be off base here. It might be hard to sell to people bringing in another Notre Dame coach. It's like, hey, we just brought in the Notre Dame guy. Now we're bringing in another. I know that's foolish if you think the guy's a good coach. And I do think the guy's a good coach. I think he would probably work at LSU, actually. I think that would be a good fit. I don't know if I would leave if I was Marcus Freeman. You're kind of in a sweet spot. You're not in a conference. You got a good situation where you can make the playoffs essentially every year. Your players love you. They love you at the university. Why give that up? Jeff Brom is a good candidate at Louisville, he's a good coach. He just beat Miami, moves his stock up. Dan Lanning at Oregon, I know he's going to be on the radar. I'm not as high on him as some folks, but he's going to be, in the conversation. I see people say you make Nick Saban tell you no. I think he's done. I would genuinely be shocked if Nick Saban returned to football. Like, I don't know why he would do that, but crazier things have happened. I've seen people throw around Urban Meyer's name. We know the toxicity that Urban Meyer brings. We know the controversy. He's not the best guy, not the most trustworthy guy. That doesn't necessarily matter if you're winning football games, but coming off this whole Brian Kelly thing, I would probably want to stay away from that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you call him and just see if he's interested, and if he is, then you start to have to really think it. But I would go Lane Kiffin over all those guys. I would have a singular focus on Lane Kiffin. And if he had no interest, then I'm probably calling Jeff Brom. Maybe I see what Urban Meyer thinks and start looking around, because I hope LSU doesn't fall into the trap of thinking they have to have a splash hire and win the press conference. You hear that all the time. We got to win the press conference. You don't. You just have to hire a good football coach. Jeff Brom is not winning the press conference, but Jeff Brom is a winning football coach who wins everywhere he goes. I hope that they look at who is available, who is interested in the job, and who they think can win and be a successful coach at that job. To me, obvious answer is Lane Kiffin, but there are other candidates out there. This is something we're going to continue to watch. I'm going to continue to cover on the channel, because this is one of those jobs that doesn't come open very, very often. And it's whoever takes this job, it can completely reshape college football, completely reshape the SEC for the next handful of years, because LSU is almost always one of those top programs, a dominant program that's always in contention. Brian Kelly has led them astray, but someone will course correct, and it will not take long. If they're a good football coach, it will not take long to fix things at LSU. One thing to watch, last point, I know I'm going on a little long. Scott Woodward's the AD. Anyone watching this, maybe you've heard this already. He was the AD at Texas A&M who brought in Jimbo Fisher with the huge buyout, and now he's got the Brian Kelly buyout. So he's got two of the biggest buyouts in college football history on his resume. I don't love that. Having that guy in there, the fact that he came in after Texas A&M is already kind of a red flag. These ADs constantly giving out these massive buyouts and these clauses in the contracts they have no business doing, because Jimmy Sexton gets on the phone and fleeces them. Mike Norvell, Florida State, got fleeced by Jimmy Sexton, telling Florida State, hey, well, Alabama's interested. Well, then you tell him to good luck and go take it, because obviously Alabama wasn't going to hire Mike Norvell. That happens every cycle. All of these positions are going to be leveraged against one another to see who can get the most money, because Jimmy Sexton wants his cut and these agents want their cut, and they're going to get that money up there as much as they can. LSU needs to put all that to the side and find the best candidate for the job. Who is the best guy to lead our program? I think it's Lane Kiffin, and I think he would take it. Florida, I don't know. I really don't know what he would do there. I think he leaves Ole Miss for LSU. And if I'm LSU, I'm bothering him every single day. Thank you so much for being with me tonight. I am Tristan Bunn. This is Sports Bluff. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like the video, tell your friends about it. Honest football talk the way it used to be, having fun along the way. Week 8 is in the books, and we're looking ahead to Week 9. Some of these teams starting to separate themselves. The ones that were kind of the middle of the pack, we see the bad ones starting to fall. Injuries mounting. So many injuries this year. Maybe we should, have tougher training camps, play in the preseason, maybe get guys ready so when they don't go from 0 to 100 and have all these injuries. That's a topic for another day. Jordan Love looks like a superstar. He made a statement. Chiefs offense keeps rolling. Lamar's coming back, and Baltimore climb back into it. Denver, are they for real? So many storylines to keep an eye on as the season progresses. The trade deadline is approaching. I'll be back to talk about all the news breaking and all of the games as they happen, and obviously keeping my eye on the LSU coaching search. Florida, we'll watch all of that as the college football season starts to move into the playoffs. We'll talk more about those games as well. Thank you guys for being here. Have a safe week, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.